So next, let's look at palpating and experiencing the tissues of the rotator cuff. So the first one we're going to look at is the subscapularis. Now for this one, we're going to think of this as the armpit muscle. So we do want to be kind of gentle. This can be sensitive tissue, and there is a nice neurovascular bundle nearby. So just note that you want to go kind of gently and lightly here, but for most people it can be a little bit tender. So I'll guide you through it. Take your left hand like a lobster claw, and you're going to grab a hold of the back side of the armpit. So we've got the front side of the armpit and the back side, and I'm going to grab a hold of the back side of the armpit so that my forefingers come around behind the scapula, and my thumb is going to go right into my armpit. Now what I want to think about is that I'm like grabbing my scapula with my fingers here. So I'm going to literally hold on to it so my thumb is pressing back into my scapula there. Now, be careful, you don't want to push in too hard just yet. So I just want to grab onto the scapula, and then I want to relax my arm there. Now what I'm going to do is push my thumb back as if I could feel my scapula, and you might already start to feel that. You're going to be on that subscapularis, remember, which covers the whole front side of the scapula. So as I hold that, you can check and make sure you're in the right place just by taking that right hand in toward your abdomen and pushing gently, because it can be tender, pushing gently into the abdomen. Remember, this is our internal rotator, so we're actively internally rotating by pressing into the belly to feel it engage. And I don't need to do that vigorously, but I'm just gently feeling. And as you do that, you might even close your eyes and notice that you can start to outline as you relax and then move your thumb around and then engage again and push into the belly. You can start to feel the outline of that, though you probably won't be able to get all the way into your armpit to feel the whole thing. Now do the other side just so that you have that awareness, because I do think it helps you feel these armpit muscles, which are an area we don't usually think about, the muscles in our armpits, especially deep in the armpit here. But remember, this is also a really important one because it sits right central to the joint here. So it helps to draw the humeral head right into the socket. So on the second side, again, if you can grab the scapula, forefingers around the back, thumb is right in the center, and start to press in gently. This time, you could also think about hugging the head of the humerus, not my shoulder blade down, but the head of the humerus into the socket. This really subtle action, and you might also feel it turn on. Right? You could also bring the hand back to the abdomen and push in as well to feel it turn on. Again, you can start to outline, relax, move the thumb around a little bit, and then try it out again and start to outline some of the muscle. Close your eyes so that you can visualize where the muscle is. Visualize that action of the subscapularis drawing the head of the humerus into the socket and also internally rotating. So you can feel this connection to a part of the body which usually tends to be a little less connected. Now the next one we're going to look at is supraspinatus. So what we want to think about with supraspinatus here is first off that we have the trapezius, the traps here that are going to be superficial to all of what we're going to palpate in a moment. So we got this thick tissue of trapezius. You can give yourself a nice little rub. It usually, no one really minds this one usually. But then what I want to think about here is I want to find the spine of the scapula, and I want to go just superior to the spine of the scapula so that it's almost like my finger is still barely kind of like right on the edge of the bone as I push in pretty firmly. So I'm kind of on the back edge of the trapezius now. Now I'm going to push in pretty firmly right above the bone of the spine of the scapula, and I'm just going to abduct my arm just a little bit. Notice I'm just going like 5 or 10 degrees here. And what you're going to feel is that supraspinatus turn on. It's going to be a small contraction. And if I continue and lift my arm up, you're going to feel the trapezius start to turn on even more and kick you out. Not vigorously turn on, but the trapezius is part of what helps us lift our arm up overhead. So when we look at this, and we'll talk about the trapezius later, you can feel that supraspinatus in this lower range of motion as a really delicate, kind of deeper contraction. And as I lift the arm up higher, you're going to feel that superficial trapezius start to kick you out of the tissue there. So do the other side just so that you can feel that. Again, find that area right above the spine of the scapula, and I'm pressing in pretty firmly. For most people, it feels kind of nice. If it's painful, clearly you want to back off. But I'm going to press in pretty firmly and then just take my arm into a little bit of abduction. And this time you might even start to walk it out laterally toward that acromion. And notice that there's a point where you run into the bony structure of the acromion where the supraspinatus dives underneath it. Now all of this here on the humeral head is going to be the tendinous cuff. So it's going to be really hard to distinguish and palpate and feel that, though you might feel some tenderness on the head of the humerus. So what I'm looking for is everything right above the spine of the scapula. One that can be nice for this one is to grab your two myofascial or tennis balls and to lie back with your block next to you. Now for this one, I'm going to take the balls and I'm going to wedge them right above the spine of the scapula. And I want to visualize what you just did as the ball, the edge of the ball being right above the spine of the scapula. So it's almost grazing right up against the spine of the scapula. So you really have to have a good visualization of the anatomy of both the bony structure and of the muscle in order to find that. So I'm not right up here on the top of the traps, but I'm right above the spine of the scapula. Now from here, I'm just going to lift my hips and put my hips on a block. And you can either just rest your arms along your side, or if it feels comfortable, you can take your arms up a little higher. Now close your eyes, and as you come into this, find a comfortable place for your arms. Relax your neck, drop your head. And just take a moment to visualize this muscle as you feel the sensation of the myofascial balls there. And visualize it in the supraspinous fossa, going under the acromion to attach to the top of the humeral head. Again, clearly you could stay here, but for now we'll come out, remove the myofascial balls one at a time, then remove the block, and then you can roll onto your side and come up. Now we've got one more. And this one can be a little intense, so I'll warn you ahead of time. You might want to have a blanket nearby, and remember, all you've got to do is just drape. You won't be able to see my ball at this point, but drape it over the ball. Okay, so if you're working with that, just know that that's an option. The block is going to be for my head. Now remember, the most important thing is that I want to consider where I'm putting the ball. Remember, I'm going to be below. Here's the spine of my scapula here. And I want to be below that. So I've got a lot of surface area here on the scapula itself, but below the spine of the scapula. So I don't want to be out here off of the scapula, and I don't want to be in here inside of the scapula where we were with the rhomboids. But I want to be on any of this tissue that covers the actual shoulder blade of the scapula below the spine of the scapula. So I'm going to lie on my side. I'm going to take my head to a block, and I'm going to lean back enough that I can place the ball behind me. So we'll do one side at a time. Now I'm going to roll over to my side and put my arm on the ground. Now how much weight I put on this is going to depend on how far I roll. So to keep it a little bit more moderate, just make sure you keep a little bit of your weight leaning back. Now remember, the infraspinatus is an external rotator. So I'm just going to take it through this rotation back and forth, through internal and external rotation, just to help to feel the tissues, feel the fibers contracting gently or shortening slightly and lengthening, making sure you've got your block to support your head. And again, close your eyes and see if you can visualize. So visualize the muscle fibers of the infraspinatus going from that infraspinous fossa, the whole back side of the scapula below the spine of the scapula, and inserting on the back side of the head of the humerus. And then from here, you can just roll around a little bit. So you can open your eyes again to see that I'm just going to roll around a little bit here and feel the different muscle fibers, maybe go a little bit lower and rotate. Remember, our purpose here isn't so much the myofascial release, but more the experience of what the tissues feel like, to notice and feel and explore. And then switch sides. One of the great things about myofascial release is also that it doesn't usually take long. So you might be getting some nice release as a side effect. So again, I'm going to lie on my side, take my arm up so that I can wedge the ball behind me here. And again, I want to think about it below the spine of the scapula, which is generally if I'm reaching under my arm to put the ball in place, where I'll end up. And then again, place the elbow on the floor. Remember, any props you want to use, even if you wanted to put something on your elbow so it wasn't as low there, I can also just roll back a little bit. I can also put blankets on top of the balls there, or the one myofascial ball there. And then from there, if you want, you can internally and externally rotate. If that's too much intensity for you, remember, you can just rest the arm on the floor. You can back off, you can skip it. It shouldn't be painful. But what I want you to do again is visualize, close your eyes. Visualize that connection from the back of the scapula, below the spine of the scapula, to the back of the humerus. And remember those tissues shortening as you externally rotate and lengthening as you internally rotate. Palm up is external rotation. Palm down is internal rotation. Great, then slowly release and come on up. And then just take a moment there, come to a seat and just close your eyes and see if you can visualize that whole cuff. That awareness you created in the armpits, the front of the scapula, attaching to the front of the humerus. That awareness you created on top, the supraspinatus, going from above the spine of the scapula to the top of the humerus. And that awareness you created on the back, the infraspinatus and teres minor, going from the back of the scapula to the back of the head of the humerus. And to just visualize and feel how all of those come together to create this cuff over the top of the head of the humerus to both stabilize and position the head of the humerus in the socket. And then open your eyes. Now that we've covered the shoulder and a lot of the stabilizers of the shoulder, our next step will be putting it into practice. Next time you come back, we'll have a yoga practice for you to experience the muscles of the shoulders. Enjoy.